Castellanos, and today I'll be answering the question that states, analyze the extent to which John Brown's raid and the election of Abraham Lincoln led to the dissolution of the Union. In the mid-1800s, the North and the South were hit with countless factors such as the Dred Scott case and the Kansas-Nebraska Act that led to the ultimate dissolution of the Union. Two other factors that led to the dissolution of the Union was John Brown's raid and the election of Abraham Lincoln. John Brown's raid played a significant role in distancing the North and the South on the topic of slavery. Though the raid only lasted less than 36 hours, it would influence the dissolution of the Union in the long run. After sentenced and hanged in Virginia, David Henry Thoreau wrote an address in support of John Brown, whom he called a man of principle, of rare courage, and devoted humanity, ready to sacrifice his life at any moment for the benefit of the fellow man. In the plea of Captain John Brown, he even went as far as to call out abolitionists that did not support John Brown's violence. John Brown was seen as a martyr, a symbol of hope to the injustices of slavery in the eyes of the North. However, this praise cannot be said the same for the South, however. The South thought that the North had provoked the violence and it was an act of abolitionist terrorism. The South felt that the North was taking steps to end slavery in the region and to end their way of life in the South. Nathaniel Bacon even went as far as to say, "No man was ever so justly hanged." The South felt that the sentencing was appropriate, seeing all the violence that he had unleashed in the South. His death was celebrated in the South, and state legislators in the South even went as far as to pass legislation that created militias to protect the South from Northern aggression. The South felt that in order to be safe, they had to have an army behind them. And both the insights of Hawthorne and Thoreau show the polar opposite reactions to John Brown's violence. One, the North saw John Brown's violence as a martyr and a hope for the abolitionist cause, while the South saw him as a terrorist who was conspiring to create a full-fledged rebellion. And this North and the South had so much distance between them that now there was no way to compromise, and now they had finally led to violence and also the creation of the Confederate Army in the South. Another factor that led to the dissolution of the Union was the election of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was opposed in the South because he was a Republican. The Republicans' platform of higher tariffs and anti-slavery forces only seemed to benefit the North while disregarding the South and the South's way of life. This was solidified during Lincoln's House Divided speech, where he said, "This government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free." Lincoln was a threat to the Southern way of life and deemed a radical. In 10 Southern states, he wasn't even put on the ballot, which demonstrates the lack of support for Abraham Lincoln. Even with this action, Abraham Lincoln was still elected president. And the South felt that they had lost all representation in Congress, and they felt that they had totally been disregarded by the North. An example of this can be seen in Rosie O'Neill's Greenhouse Diary, where she wrote, "Instead of friends, I see in Washington only mortal enemies. Instead of loving the old flag of the stars and stripes, I see it only as a symbol of murder, plunder, oppression, and shame." The North's oppression on the South had finally led the South to feel that the only way to lead the way of life that they felt they deserved was to secede from the Union. And by Abraham Lincoln's inauguration in January, 7 states had already seceded from the Union. The action of Abraham Lincoln's election as president led to the complete dissolution of the Union and the beginning of the Civil War. Both of these factors led to the dissolution of the Union, and as well as other factors.